Now, a very good afternoon to you. I'm Angeline Ong, and welcome to this edition of Beat Street. Not long now before Wall Street starts trading, it's all about Nvidia, just showing you Wall Street, or rather Dow Jones Industrials ahead of the open. And it was tracking higher, but it's now slightly tipping, as you can see there. That's the minute chart giving you the action. Let's just have a look at the NASDAQ as well, because this, of course, is tied very much to the fortunes of Nvidia, starting with the daily chart first, because as you can see there, we're still seeing that long-term trend there in play, and you can see that it is tracking slightly higher. But if you look at the minute chart, it could show us a different picture as we start counting down closer and closer to the cash open, and it is starting to get more volatile there. S&P, one of the more interesting ones, but I'll get to that in just a moment. We've got some breaking news just out here. The initial jobless claims for the week ending 17th of February, we were looking out for 218,000. We got 201,000 instead. Claimant count there, 215.2K. And also the jobless claims is continuing. Jobless claims, so week ending 10th of February, we're looking for 1.8. That was pretty much bang in line with expectations. But in terms of the initial jobless claims count, a slight easing there from what was expected. Probably welcome news to the Fed after minutes showed that the Fed is waiting on data before making any big decisions. Checking in on the US dollar basket there really quickly, if I may, just to see if there's been any reaction, and really there's not been a huge amount. It's ticked slightly higher on the minute chart, and checking Wall Street as well there. It's just coming off there, as I said, a bit more volatility. But let's get back to the main story, which is affecting all markets, and also the biggest indices. Biggest story in town, of course, Nvidia, the company which is now the world's biggest chip maker by market cap. As of the close last night, it had a market cap of $1.6 trillion. Now, this compares to Taiwan Semiconductor's $567 billion, AMD $265 billion, Intel $183 billion, and ARM ADR's $126 million. Jeremy Naylor joins me now to tell us a bit more about the earnings and the upcoming reaction.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's smashed on pretty much every single aspect of what was expected: sales, revenues, income, outgoings, costs, and the EPS number. Let's take a look at the figures, I think, first of all, before we take a look at the chart, to get a better perspective on exactly what it was we saw that was delivered, because we saw earnings per share coming at $5.16 per share compared with estimates of $4.61. Nvidia reporting fourth quarter revenue, $22.1 billion, beating estimates of $20.55 billion. Sales growth accelerating at the data center. Now, this is a segment which comprises cloud and AI services. We'll be talking a little bit more about this, I know, Angie, in just a few moments' time, because AI is the actual central motor here behind what's been going on. Now, this particular part of the business grew at a whopping 409%, 409% to 18.4 billion, smashing estimates of 16.8 billion. Data center revenue grew close to 280% in the prior quarter as well. Now, for the current quarter, Nvidia anticipates a revenue growth of 233%. That too is ahead of Wall Street expectations of 208% growth. But let's take a look at the main question remaining: how long will Nvidia be able to sustain this pace of growth? Let's take a look at the share price chart before I go into some more detail. Now, what I've done here is I've split this up into 1 hourly charts, 1 hourly candles, just to show you what happened last night. Now, this big green candle here is the initial reaction out of the gate. In fact, you can see initially it fell. There was something in there which disappointed some traders, taking it down. I'm not quite sure what it was, but that quickly spun back. In the first hour of trade, we were up over 9%. Then came the full thrust of the all sessions on the IG platform late last night, going into the 1 o'clock close this morning. The stock in total, as at the close last night, after the small gains that we saw during the main part of the trading day, up 9%. Then came the 9 o'clock open this morning in the European markets. This was the next big leg up when the European investors got hold of this. And they said, hang on a minute, there's still some more upside to go, up another 5.4%. This is where we are at the moment. We're currently trading at $759.22. We will still be up around about 12% on from the cash close yesterday. Let me take a look at this in the context of the daily charts, the daily candles. This big blue box in the middle here is a 238.3% rise that we saw in the year overall last year. This is the 56.4%. There's a little bit of a twisting here because of the way in which this is all put together. If I put this onto a logarithmic scale, you can see in proportion exactly what that 56 looks like in the context of last year's rise. As I say, it's logarithmic, so you don't get the same incremental increase in terms of price on the right-hand side on the Y scale here on this chart. But I think it's interesting going back even further back than that. Let me just return to the linear scale to take a look even further back as to where Nvidia came from, because if you look all the way back in history, it didn't really lift off until about 2016, but there has been this enormous gain for investors and shareholders in the business. This is the last year gain, and this you can see here is this rise up to where we are at the moment. So you can see in the context of all that. But as I said, it remains, how long will this be able to sustain this pace of growth? When you look at this sort of chart, you think to yourself, it's got to turn sometime soon. Soaring demand for chips has been putting the group's supply chains to the test. Chief Executive Jensen Huang told analysts there's no way the company can reasonably keep up with the demand in the short term as it ramps up production. But it says that when it gets things into gear, it will start to meet all forms of demand. And that's when supply starts to increase. And that's when the price of chips may start to come down, which might put a different dynamic on it. But this will allow Nvidia to deliver more chips on through to customers. So it's an interesting story as we see things develop. Certainly one of the gainers at the start of today's session, Angie.
And Jerry, you made a good point there as well with the charts, because I've been looking at the 1 minute chart, and as you can see from my box here, if I may, there seems to be a repricing as we get closer and closer to cash open. The minute chart showing a ticking off there, certainly. Jerry, I mentioned the size of Nvidia compared to rivals in the US. How does AMD and ARM and Intel compete and compare?
Yeah, just quickly return to that minute by minute chart. I think it's worth remembering that when you get these big moves up, you do get some people taking money off the table. You do get some triggers coming through, which will then start to see some of the gains eaten into. But talking about the AMD chart, let's take a look at what I've got here, because this is advanced micro devices. Now, AMD has very quickly followed Nvidia into AI chips. As we'll see in just a minute, Intel is a massive underperformer. As you so rightly said at the top, that we've got something like around about $265 billion worth of value in AMD. Nothing like the 1.6 trillion in Nvidia. But if you look at what's happened, this is another all-session stock. Yesterday it gained. Today we've got a little bit more interest in. This is the record high that we had. Let me just quickly take that up to the record high at $184.90. We're currently trading at 173.05, looking for a stronger start for AMD at the beginning of today's session. But that is a record high we've seen. If we flip this over onto what Intel's been doing, you can see this is a massive underperformer. In fact, going back, this big red box is the top to the bottom. Where we saw the chip maker go into COVID and the problems with supply chains and so forth. And it has only recovered partially, whereas we've seen those new record highs for AMD. So Intel not on the AI track like AMD is, and nothing like what we've seen for the moves that we've seen into Nvidia. Just quickly following up on ARM Holdings. This is only an ADR. This is an American depository receipt. We don't have any cash trading on the session. ADRs do mimic what happens in the main market, but we've got the close yesterday at 123.40. We are expecting a lift off at the start today for ARM Holdings as a result of what we've had there from Nvidia, and the move up, I think, will add to weight of the chip sector as we see the start of today's trade when the US markets get up underway at 2:30 p.m. today, UK time.
And Jerry, obviously we are seeing this Nvidia effect already likely to lift, as you say, the markets. What do you think will be the actual contribution to Wall Street's move today?
This is really interesting, isn't it? Because Nvidia, it's a 4-letter ticker, and that means it started life on the Nasdaq, and it is one of the big Nasdaq contributors, and it will remain so. But as you just pointed out, the Nasdaq, if we bring up a chart here showing you what we've got in terms of the gain that we've had, out of the move from the beginning of this year. The Nasdaq is up 7.29%. We are expecting an uplift at the start, as you said quite correctly, on from yesterday's gains that we had. We are expecting this chip sector to contribute majorly to the gains we've got. I think more importantly for me is the fact that in the last 6 or 7 years or so, the S&P has adopted more of these large, certainly more of the Magnificent Seven, more of the large chip makers, the tech companies, the new tech companies that have contributed so much to the Nasdaq's rise over the years. S&P now has more of those in its stable, and this is why we got this lift off here. And as you correctly said just a short while ago, we got a new all-time intraday record high in the 24-hour markets for the S&P 500, looking for a record start when trade gets underway today. So this record at 5,049 will be moved up. Let me just quickly shift that up to the intraday high we've seen, 5055.27. So that's the number to beat. We're looking for a stronger start on the S&P 500. So, and I think certainly the chip sector is almost certainly going to be the lion's share of the contributor to these tech indices that will react positively to the news out last night from Nvidia. Back to you.
Thanks very much, Jerry. What an exciting day. Thank you so much for coming on. We're going to be crossing this news with Nvidia and also the markets and tracking the moves as we count down to the cash open. I just want to show you the US 500, as you've seen from Jerry as well, because it is so exciting. We're seeing some of these moves cool slightly now after the slight easing of the weekly jobless claims data. Also showing you Wall Street, but S&P there, as you can see, it did hit a fresh record. If you look at the minute chart around 11:21 London time, just checking out Dow Jones Industrials as well, because we're similar to the S&P 500. We're also seeing a bit of a cooling there after that weekly jobless claims number. Let's have a look at the dollar basket as well. And prior to that number, this was at around 10,348, and it's ticking ever so slightly higher, not by much though, 10,358 there. For more on the dollar index and the longer term picture on the technical front, Sean Merrison joins us now. Sean?
Seeing some interesting price action on the dollar index at this point in time. We had that short to medium term trend reversal, which was marked by that inverse head and shoulders. That really seems to have found some resistance at that 104.70 mark. Now, we just circled what we see as a bearish or evening star formation, which is a bearish candlestick formation. And we have started to move lower. Now, interestingly enough, this candle, which is today and it's not yet complete, and we'll see how it does close today, showing a bit of an intraday reversal with that long lower wick, which just suggests that some price rejection at that lower level. If we just draw in our lines on that, just a quick channel, there is also a suggestion that could be a bit of a bullish flag formation now. Bullish flag as a function of that preceding trend up. And so the assumption was it would be if we can see that price closing above resistance here of this flag, we could see some more gains in the US dollar. And we'd once again target a move towards that 104.70. So we're watching this quite closely today. That pattern would be negated if today's candle doesn't manage to produce a strong close and does actually start trading below that lower support of that flag.
Sean, thanks very much. Sean there, taking a look at the dollar index ahead of those weekly numbers, the initial claims, jobless claims rather. Just taking a look at one other stock. I mean, in the drug sector, the one to watch is Moderna, the company with the ticker that's quite apt, mRNA, delivered a surprise Q4 profit of $217 million. That's 55 cents a share, which beat the street because analysts were anticipating a loss, really. Its numbers supported by cost cutting and also some deferred payments. But what's getting investors really excited, it's always the outlook, isn't it? What a stock can deliver, not what it's doing now. Moderna set out a commercial roadmap for its experimental respiratory syncytial virus, otherwise known as RSV. This is a shot. Now, just looking at the shares here, Moderna, all sessions on the IG platform. This is a daily chart, and it's looking like it's 6% higher. However, the real action can be seen on the 15-minute chart. Take a look at that. That was after its earnings came out, and quite a reaction, as you can see there. Moderna, like many of the other players in this space, has been trying very hard after COVID to make way for new pipeline products that could perhaps help it spur growth in the future. Moderna has seen a 44.6% fall in 2023, and now it's placing its hopes on cancer drugs, influenza drugs, and vaccines like the RSV to help it make up for falling COVID revenue. Moving on to telecommunications, a cellular outage early this session over in the US have hit thousands of AT&T users over there. Just bring up Verizon's share price for you as a daily first, because Verizon is all sessions on the IG platform. There you go. And at the moment, just checking for reaction, it is around 0.2% higher. So not much of a reaction just yet. The reason why I am checking on Verizon for you is because users of Verizon and T-Mobile and US Cellular also reported disruptions, though the outage with these services much less than AT&T. This is according to Down Detector. We'll be keeping an eye on that story for you. But the big one to look out for before we go, let's have a last look at how the markets are looking. This is a picture, a minute chart for Wall Street. As you can see, they're still ticking higher. And let's just show you the hourly chart. Similar trend there, as you can see, although there has been a rejigging, perhaps, as Jerry said, people taking profits off the table for Nvidia, which I'll show you right now. This is Nvidia, the hourly chart there. But also take a look at the 15-minute chart for Nvidia. As you can see there, still expected to open higher, but we have seen a rejigging and increase in volatility as we creep closer to that open. And that's it for this edition of Beat the Street, the show that follows the trading action, helping you position yourself ahead of the opening bell. For more trading insight, follow me on @IGCom and @Angeline on Twitter. This is IGTV.